She walked into the billionaire's mansion, holding his hand, smiling, nervous, unaware of the whispers waiting behind those glass doors. "That's her?" one voice sneered. "She doesn't belong here." The laughter that followed wasn't just cruel, it was calculated. But what none of them knew was that the girl they mocked for her skin was about to change his world forever. Because love wasn't the only thing he was ready to fight for. And when he finally did, the entire family learned what true worth really means. So what happens when money meets prejudice and loses? Before we dive in, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it right now? I love seeing your answers. Aaliyah wasn't used to luxury. She grew up in a small apartment with her mom, juggling 2 part-time jobs while studying art. Her hands were always covered in paint, her laughter contagious, her dreams simple, make enough to help Mom retire early. When she met Ethan at a charity event, she didn't even know he was a billionaire. He wore jeans instead of a suit, and when he smiled at her sketches, it wasn't pity, it was admiration. Weeks turned into months, and suddenly, Aaliyah found herself in a world she'd only seen on TV, private jets, gala dinners, and families with names that opened doors. Ethan's love made her feel seen, but the looks from others made her feel small. "You sure you're okay with all this?" he asked one night, his tone soft, worried. She smiled, trying to hide the ache in her chest. "As long as you're with me, I'll be fine." But deep down, she knew not everyone would see it that way. The first time she met his family was coming soon, and something in her gut whispered that love alone might not be enough to protect her from what was waiting behind those mansion doors. The black sedan stopped in front of the Whitmore mansion, a place Aaliyah had only seen in glossy magazines. As she stepped out, clutching a small bouquet she'd brought for Ethan's mother, her heart thudded in her chest. The marble stairs gleamed under the golden lights, and for a moment she felt like she didn't belong. Ethan squeezed her hand. "They'll love you," he whispered. She wanted to believe him. Inside, the atmosphere was colder than the marble floor. His mother, Victoria Whitmore, greeted her with a stiff smile. "You must be Aaliyah," she said, eyes flicking from her curls to her skin tone, as if calculating something she didn't want to say aloud. "What a unique choice, Ethan." The words stung, sugar-coated in politeness, but sharp enough to draw blood. Ethan's jaw tightened. "She's not a choice, Mom. She's the woman I love." At dinner, the silence between silverware clinks felt deafening. His father asked polite but cutting questions, where she studied, what her parents did, whether she had traveled much outside. Her area. Each word carried the weight of superiority. Even the cousins exchanged looks that made her skin crawl. When she reached for the wineglass, a cousin muttered under his breath, "Careful, that's vintage." The table chuckled. Aaliyah froze, her throat tightening, eyes darting to Ethan for help. He placed his hand over hers, steady and firm, but she could feel the heat of humiliation burning through her. Later, when she excused herself to the restroom, she overheard voices from the hallway. Victoria's voice was sharp, venomous. "Ethan, this is your phase. She's not one of us. What will people say?" Another voice, his aunt maybe, added, "A girl like that doesn't marry into this family. You're risking everything for her." Aaliyah stood frozen behind the wall, every word slicing through her like glass. When she returned, she tried to smile, tried to pretend she hadn't heard. But her eyes gave her away. "Let's go," Ethan said quietly, pushing back his chair. His mother rose. "Leaving already? Dinner not up to your taste?" Her tone dripped with mock sweetness. Ethan turned to her, his voice cold. "No, Mom, the dinner was fine." The company wasn't. They drove back in silence. Aaliyah stared out the window, tears threatening to fall. "I'm sorry," Ethan said finally. "I thought they'd see you the way I do." She shook her head. "It's not your fault they don't see me. It's their fault they never wanted to." But the next morning, the cruelty followed her beyond the mansion walls. Photos of her with Ethan leaked online, taken at the dinner table, zoomed in, captioned with slurs. The Whitmore heir's latest experiment. The comments were worse, mocking her looks, her background, her skin. Aaliyah's phone buzzed non-stop. Some messages were kind, but most were venomous. "You don't belong with..." him. He'll drop you soon. Ethan's PR team urged him to release a statement to control the damage. But when his family demanded he end things to save the family's reputation, he didn't answer. Not yet. Because for the first time, Ethan realized this wasn't just about love anymore. It was about choosing between silence and standing up for what was right. And his choice would shake everything his family stood for. The next morning, Ethan called a press conference alone. Cameras flashed as reporters shouted questions about the viral scandal, about her. His mother watched from the front row, stone-faced. Alia wasn't there. She couldn't bear to be. But the world was. Ethan stepped up to the mic, his voice trembling but clear. You've all seen the photos. You've all read the headlines. And I'm here to tell you, every cruel word written about Alia says more about you than it ever could about her. Gasps rippled through the crowd. You call her names because of her skin? Because she wasn't born rich? That's not journalism, that's cowardice. His father stood abruptly, his tone sharp. Ethan, enough! This is a family matter. No, Dad! Ethan snapped, his voice breaking for the first time. This isn't just family anymore. This is what people like Alia face every single day. The whispers, the humiliation, the way people with power pretend they're not part of the problem. The room went silent. Reporters leaned forward. His mother's lips tightened. Do you have any idea what you're doing? She hissed. Ethan looked at her, eyes wet but unflinching. Yes, for once in my life I do. He turned back to the cameras. You all call me a billionaire's son like it's an achievement. But she built everything from nothing. She didn't inherit her worth. She earned it. So if loving her means I lose my inheritance, my name, my family, then so be it. Gasps filled the hall. Flashbulbs went off like lightning. Reporters shouted his name, his father stormed out, and his mother's face went pale as marble. Back home, Alia watched the broadcast, tears streaming down her cheeks. For the first time, someone hadn't just defended her, they'd fought for her. The man who had everything had risked it all for love and truth. But the real question still hung in the air like static. Would his stand change hearts, or only cost him everything he had left? In the days that followed, Ethan's speech spread like wildfire. News outlets replayed his words, social media erupted, and for once the story wasn't twisted, it was heard. While the Whitmore family tried to silence the noise, people were already choosing sides. Some called Ethan reckless, others called him brave. But Alia? She called him real. When Ethan showed up at her small apartment a week later, she opened the door before he could knock. You really gave them everything, she whispered, tears in her eyes. He smiled softly. It wasn't theirs to keep. In that quiet moment, surrounded by peeling paint and the scent of her art supplies, they both realized something. He may have lost his world, but she helped him find his soul. Months later, the same media that once mocked Alia now wanted her story. Instead, she used the attention for something bigger. She started a foundation to help young black artists from underprivileged communities. And when the first exhibit opened, Ethan stood beside her, no last name attached, just Ethan and Alia equals partners, fighters. The Whitmore name had lost some power, but Ethan didn't care. You built something they can't buy, she told him one evening, her fingers interlaced with his. And you taught them something money will never teach, humanity. Their story wasn't just about love, it became a mirror. A reminder of how racism hides behind smiles, wealth, and polite conversations. How silence protects it. And how courage, real courage, breaks it. Because at the end of the day, love didn't just cross color. It confronted power. So the question remains, if love can stand up to prejudice, what's our excuse for staying silent? If this story moved you, share it. Talk about it. And never forget, change begins the moment we refuse to look away.